again, that that cartridge case was fired from that firearm.
Okay, so to be clear with the jury, you finally were able to determine that what had been at the residence as placard 5 came to the lab and became number 6, and now was 294, was fired from that gun.
That's correct.
I'm going to approach and show you what's been admitted into evidence as 298. Just for all purposes, it's secure. Will you tell the jury what 298 is?
So this is a Ruger 1022, model 1022, 22 long rifle, long gun or rifle, and the serial number on this particular firearm is 0003-61269. So this is the rifle that I examined and testified in my laboratory.
And is this the same rifle that you identified as the one that had fired those bullets and left a casing that was found and the bullets that had killed Mr. Cooper?
This rifle was compared to the cartridge case, yes.
Okay. And you determined that it's the same that had done that?
Yes.
Okay. You talked about the comparison. Can you just tell the jury in terms of the science, and if it might aid you to show you your pictures on what you use to, how you do the comparison?
So we talked a little bit about the comparison microscope. So in the case of examination of the test-fired cartridge cases, we use a comparison microscope in which we have 2 stages. We're able to use one eyepiece, and we can examine the cartridge cases across that one eyepiece. So on the left stage, I have the test-fired cartridge cases from this particular rifle. On the right, I have the cartridge case from the scene. I use that singular the set of eyepieces. I'm able to compare the markings that are left by this firearm on the test-fired cartridge case to the markings that are on the sample from the scene, and take photographs, and then conclude that that cartridge case had been fired from this particular firearm.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for the purposes of identification as State Exhibit 276 through 285. Do you recognize what I've handed you as 276 through 285?
I do, yes.
Okay. For those pictures that you took as part of your testing for this firearm to determine if it was the exact firearm that had been used to fire those bullets that killed Mr. Cooper?
This is a combination of photos of my first report and my second report, including the comparison photos that I took.
Okay. They're fair and accurate of what you did as part of your analysis?
Yes.
We move to publish 276 through 285.
Do you want to offer them first?
Oh, we move to admit them into evidence.
Mr. Hawbaker, any objection?
We have no objection.
All right. Then 276 through 285 are admitted, and we can now publish them. Okay.
Are you able to see that clearly, Ms. Hart?
I am.
Okay. Can you tell us what we see on what's been admitted as 276?
Yes, I can. So to start, what you're looking at here is what I would see through my comparison microscope. So I'm using a set of eyepieces, as I talked about, and on the left you have an image, and on the right we have an image. So I have two stages, I have two spots to put two different cartridge cases. In this particular photo, we're referring to report 11. So we see my lab item 38 down the bottom left-hand corner. That's the test fires from the item 38, or the rifle, that was submitted. And that on the right side is the cartridge case that was collected from the scene. In this particular photo, you're definitely seeing that there is a difference in the firing pin strike, which is at the 3 o'clock position on that cartridge case. On the left, we have a very narrow rectangular strike. On the right, we have a more typical square rectangle shape firing pin impression. So that's just showing what two different firing pins will look like. This is an exclusion. These are two different class characteristics. So we're seeing two different shaped firing pins. And so that's referring to that report 11 where that firearm was eliminated as having fired that cartridge case on the right-hand side.
Okay. So here you're doing the elimination. This is not the one you're saying, nope, this is not it.
Correct.
Okay. And that's how part of the science works, is you can do that microscopic comparison.
That is correct.
What do we see on 277?
So again, on the left side, we have a different test fire from a different rifle, again from that report number 11. Item 39 is actually another rifle. So you're seeing, again, that rectangular shaped firing pin. However, you can tell there's a different shape. That firing pin's a completely different shape from the firing pin impression on the right-hand side, again at that 3 o'clock position. So again, it's a class characteristic that's different, and therefore there's an elimination.
Move to 278.
Again, another test-fired cartridge case on the left, and this is a very distinct, different marking left behind by that firearm. On the left-hand side, that firing pin and that cartridge is moving around in that chamber. So you see some shearing there on the left. That's what that big kind of oval-shaped reflective area is. Versus the evidence on the right-hand side. So again, this is another elimination.
And that elimination is every firearm kind of leaves a fingerprint, so you can tell which prints were taken, if I use normal layman's understanding of fingerprints.
Yes. Okay.
What do we see on 279?
So now this is a picture of item 49, and this is found in report 13. This is the Ruger 1022 rifle that I just showed you a little bit ago. The firing pin impression on the left from the test-fired cartridge case from that rifle has very similar characteristics from this view. Now this is a blown out view. This is a zoomed out distant view, an overall picture of that cartridge case. And so you can start to see, if I refer you to the top 12 o'clock, actually 11 o'clock position, we've got the ejector. We've got a mark in that top left corner, and then you work your way around to the 3 o'clock position, and that firing pin shape and the marks that are in that firing pin are consistent with each other. And from this position here, this overall just gives you a general view. I'll take additional photographs of that breech face marks, of the breech face marks, of the ejector marks, of the firing pin impression. So that's what you're going to see in the subsequent photos.
I'm going to hand you a pointer so that you can just clarify what you say to the jury. So that you take all this.
Thank you. So I was referring to that 11 o'clock position, these marks here and here, and then that firing pin impression here at the 3 o'clock position. And then there's also some breech face marks, but again, we'll look at those in closer magnification. So this would be the firearm that I identified the cartridge case as having been fired from.
What do we see on State Exhibit 280?
So this is actually kind of turning the cartridge case around on my scope. So instead of the previous photo, which we're looking at the head stamp area of that cartridge case, now we've turned it on its side and we're looking at the chamber marks from the inside of that chamber of that firearm. So again, these are stria. These scratches that go across, this black line is the line of demarcation. So on the left is the left stage of my microscope over here, and the right side of that line is the right stage. So I've got that cartridge case turned horizontally, and I can see these marks that are left from the inside of the chamber. And so you can start at the top and you kind of work your way down, and you can see how these lines here align across that line of demarcation. It's just another mark, another spot within that chamber that helps to identify that cartridge case as having been fired from that firearm.
What do we see on 281?
So this is a cast. So when we are dealing with cartridge cases, we use some casting material. It's kind of like an epoxy. It mixes together, and we're able to apply that to the head stamp. We can pull that casting material off, and it's going to give us a mirror image, if you will, kind of like silly putty. When you pull silly putty off of a newspaper, you'd have that silly putty would leave the newspaper on its surface, and you can read it backwards. That's the same thing that's happening here with that casting material. So now we're able to see what's down, and this is the firing pin impression. So now we're able to see what's at the bottom of that firing pin impression. And again, across, testifier on the left, evidence on the right, and you can start to see these marks here, these impression marks here, and there's some marks down here that we're looking at, come around here. Those are the marks that I used to identify, again, that this cartridge case was fired in this particular rifle.